Yeah, there's like three main pieces I feel like to disability justice that I think are important right now. One is that it's a multi-issue politic, which is just a fancy way of saying that it's not single issue. It's not just talking about disability. It's talking about, we're including class, we're including race, we're including gender, citizenship. I'm thinking about colonization, thinking about war and militarization, like all of those things. It is a multi-issue politic, right? That it's not just about ableism and disability, that it's also about other systems of oppression, institutions, and forms of violence. Because disabled people aren't just disabled people. We are also mothers and fathers and, women and trans people and queer people and young people and old people. We are so many things, and there's so many things that impact, for example, my life. It's not just ableism, that I also need to be able to talk about and think through. The other piece is that it is moving away from just like a rights-based and kind of like equality model. So it's not just about like, how do we expand the ranks of the privileged to include a few more people? It's actually saying like, no, we don't want to just expand the ranks of the privileged and just, what usually happens is just to add a few more people who had privileges and were at the top of that group anyways, who is getting included. But it's actually saying and questioning like that whole system, and that why some people are constantly and perpetually at the bottom, right? And who never get included into that expanded ranks. It's talking about redistribution. It's also saying we don't necessarily believe that what am I trying to say? That approach is necessarily going to work anyways. There's nothing that has shown us that simply expanding the ranks of the privileged to add a few more people has actually led us to a more just world. And then the last piece of it is that it's really talking about what justice and liberation would look like, not just equality, which is very different than justice, but what justice and liberation would look like for disabled people and our communities. So again, not just disability, and not just, I think for me, what liberation would look like for me is not just liberation for my disabled communities that I'm a part of, but also for the queer and trans people of color communities that I'm a part of, also the Korean communities that I'm a part of, also the radical women of color communities that I'm a part of. So it's also talking about connecting disabled people to our communities, which I think is so important, especially in a society and kind of like moment in history and a history and a legacy of people who have been doing, where it's been so individualized, right? Like our notions of justice are so individualized in terms of like, oh, you sue somebody and you get a settlement and that's justice. Or, oh, you send that person who hurt you to jail and that's justice. No, we're talking about a much more collective form of what justice would look like, and hopefully deeper form.